What's up, everyone? So today we're talking about train harder than last time and if this is maybe suitable for you. Now, as I'm sure a lot of you know, this is sort of the catchphrase of one Mr. Greg Doucette, and I've sort of had my differences with him, but I do think he is an overall force for good in the fitness industry, and I will absolutely have to make an updated video on him sometime. But let's get right into it. What are the good things about training harder than last time? So the good thing, the number one good thing, the biggest one by far, is that most people don't train very hard. Now, as I'm sure this isn't you, dear listener, this is other people. But other people, often they don't train very hard. If I look around the gym, most people aren't training very hard. The vast majority are nowhere close to failure. They simply lack the ability, they lack the focus, the drive, the determination, the willpower to push themselves to failure, or at least close to failure. And studies have shown pushing closer to failure is going to be absolutely vital for muscular gains as well as strength gains. So if you want to get better, you need to be able to push yourself close to failure. And to be perfectly honest, I would say 80 to 90% of people would benefit from training harder. There is a small subsection of people who won't, but the vast majority will. So I think it's a good thing overall. Number two is going to be, it is progressive. So it's a very easy thing to conceptualize. You just train harder than last time. Whatever effort, whatever willpower, whatever vim and vigor you used last time, you just turn the dial a little bit. You just up the ante, you just go a little bit harder than last time. And that is pretty easy to explain to most people. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, are the memes and the jokes. These are perhaps the most important thing. You know, I'm a man of class, a man of taste, and I appreciate a fire meme. I think they are absolutely wonderful, smashing, scrumptious, succulent, and it is a good thing. This is probably better than the people who have been inspired to train harder. Just the jokes. However, even these tasty jokes might not be enough to save this catchphrase from being a net negative. So the first one is going to be that you should be training for performance rather than just training harder. So for example, last week I did 12 reps with 160 kilos on the sumo deadlift. Next week, should I go for the same exercise and try to get better, lift more weight, or should my goal be to give a better effort? If you told me that I did the same weight and the same reps, but it just felt harder, is that necessary? Like, is that a good thing? No, I would argue it's bad. I would rather use more weight or get more reps or do another set. That is going to be a sign that I've actually progressed, that I've actually gotten better. So actually, in reality, you should try to train as easily as possible and still make gains and still progress. The old Soviet weightlifters, they used to have a saying. They said train as frequently as possible, as heavy as possible, while remaining as fresh as possible. So the goal is not fatigue. The goal is not to fail. The goal is not to go harder. The goal is simply to get better. And that might require hard training. But the difficulty is not the actual goal. Number two is going to be that it is hard to measure. So you can measure the weight on the bar, you can measure the reps, you can measure the sets. Those are all very, very quantifiable. You can try to measure the effort with something like RIR, reps in reserve, or RPE, rating of perceived exertion, which is going to be how close you are to failure. But to be honest, most people are absolutely horrible with this. I've seen even people who are very advanced not really be able to predict how close they are to failure. They might do like 4 sets of 3 at an RPE 8, and then, gun to their head, they do one final set, and they get 8 reps. So really that wasn't an RPE 8. They actually had a bunch of reps in the tank, they were just holding back. Plus, how do you know if you're really training harder? Are you actually giving in more effort, or are you just pretending? It's very, very it's mental, and it's hard to judge for yourself, and it's even hard for other people to judge for you. So this is something that is very, very hard to measure, and if you can't measure it, how do you manage it? The next one is going to be injury. So when you're training hard, injuries are going to happen. But the closer you go to failure, especially on some exercises, the greater your chances of injury. So if you keep a few reps in the tank, you could have a longer career, have more longevity, stay healthier, and actually progress better in the long term. The next one is going to be volume. Now, as you might know, volume is going to be heavily correlated with muscular gains, and to a lesser extent, strength gains. But especially for size, the overall volume of work that you are doing is going to be very, very important. So, if you do one set to failure, you go as hard as you can, harder than last time, harder than you've ever gone before, you're rock hard, and let's say you're doing pull-ups. And you do 1 rep, 2 reps, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're shuddering. Your body is just tremoring. You get 9, and you go for a 10th, and it takes like 8 seconds for the whole rep, and then you got to go harder than last time, so you lower yourself slowly, and your whole body is shaking like a leaf in a thunderstorm, and by the time the set finishes, you're just destroyed. You can feel your lats ripping and your back is pumped and your biceps are just absolutely destroyed. What do you do for the next set? You just did 10 reps. Are you going to get 10 reps again? No. You're not even going to get 9 or 8. Probably not even going to get 7. You might get 5 or 6 reps if you're lucky. The fact of the matter is, and this is based on my own experience as well as the experience of many, many other people, if you push that first set really, really, really hard to failure or even beyond, it will absolutely impact later sets. And it's going to have a huge impact on the overall volume of work that you can do. And this might actually be bad for progress. I've had all-out deadlift sets where I got 10 reps the first set and I was just wiped out, just destroyed. Like the last 4 or 5 reps were rest pause, real grinders, just destroyed my whole posterior chain. And I decided to do another set. And I went up to the bar, I got in position, I got amped up, I went to pull, and the bar didn't move. So I just did 10 reps, and now based on that fatigue, I cannot even move the bar. And so it's better in some cases to actually hold back and take a more measured approach. You can get in much more volume and you can actually maybe progress a little bit better. Another one is going to be technique. So technique is absolutely vital for powerlifting, especially for weightlifting. But basically for any sport, your technique is going to be absolutely vital. And it's important to get right. If you're always focused on just training harder, instead of actually acquiring these technical skills that you're going to need, well, this could hold you back as well. So you need to be focusing on your technique most of the time. If you look at a lot of powerlifters, I would say the majority are not going to failure during most of their training, because that is where your technique breaks down, and that is where it takes much longer to recover from. So if you do a set of 10 reps really hard to failure, those first 7 or 8 reps, that's not even half of the fatigue. It might be 70 to 80% of the reps, but it's not even half of the fatigue. I would say half the fatigue is that last rep. So is it worth it? In a lot of cases, no. And this is a concept known as the stimulus to fatigue ratio. So this is where you want the most stimulus for the least amount of fatigue. You're always going to get some fatigue. Fatigue is unavoidable. You need to embrace fatigue, manage fatigue, learn to deal with fatigue. It will happen. But in your training, you are attempting to minimize it. You're not trying to attack fatigue and try to get the most amount of fatigue. And that is where a lot of people who take this harder than last time approach, they are sort of saying, okay, you want to just go as hard as you can, which is going to be the most fatigue possible, but it's sort of ignoring the stimulus part of the equation. And that is going to be what you're trying to focus on. You want to get the most amount of stimulus, assuming you're trying to get better, This whole video, I'm just assuming you're trying to get better. That's what you care about, instead of just going as hard as possible. Next, it doesn't really take into account deloads or periodization at all. So if I write someone a program, often I'll say, run this for 6 to 8 weeks, and try to increase the load as much as you can. Train harder than last time. In this context, it makes sense. So you train harder than last time, week by week, progressively, and you're going closer to failure week by week. Then when you get to where you have a large amount of fatigue built up, you let that fatigue dissipate with a deload. And this is going to allow you to make better long-term gains. Very few people can simply train harder than last time month after month after month after month. Wear and tear adds up, just fatigue builds up, and eventually either something snaps or your performance starts to go down. For the record, I am absolutely certain that Greg knows all of this. Every single word that I just said, I'm sure he knows about, and he probably agrees with the majority of it. From a strength training perspective, he is very, very knowledgeable. He's a world record holding powerlifter, and he has many more years than me under his belt when it comes to this kind of thing. So he absolutely knows all of this. And the reason why I'm making this video, it's not to show him up. It's not to be like, look what I know this and he doesn't. No, okay? That's not what I'm saying here. I'm only making this video because I get asked this question quite a bit. And I think there are people out there who they take his word at literal meaning. So they think, okay, I just need to train harder than last time every single workout. So overall, I think this phrase, this saying, this catchphrase is a net positive. But it absolutely needs to be tempered with a deeper level of understanding. If it is not, it can be very easy to be misunderstood. Alright, that is all for today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Peace!